You're on a phone call. Nothing unusual, maybe a work issue, maybe a difficult conversation with a family member. You haven't moved. You haven't changed rooms. You haven't raised your voice above a normal conversational level. And your dog gets up, walks over, and sits directly in front of you, staring. Most people assume the dog wants attention, or that it's confused by the one-sided conversation, or that it simply noticed you were occupied and decided that made you more interesting. None of those explanations are accurate. What's actually happening is this. While you were focused on the call, your dog was conducting a real-time acoustic analysis of your vocal output, parsing pitch shifts, rhythm changes, and tonal micro-variations with a neural system built specifically to extract emotional data from human sound. The dog didn't react to the call. It reacted to what it heard inside your voice during the call. And in many cases, it identified your emotional state before you consciously acknowledged it yourself. There are 3 explanations owners give most often. 1. The dog is confused by the one-sided conversation. He hears a voice but can't locate the second person. 2. It's jealous of the divided attention. 3. It's simply startled at the noise and is now hovering out of general excitability. These explanations are not entirely wrong, but they are structurally incomplete. Here's the problem with all 3. They don't account for specificity. If the dog were reacting to the format of a phone call, the one-sidedness, the noise, the attention split, it would react the same way to every call. It doesn't. Your dog reacts differently to different calls. It tracks emotional valence. A calm call produces a calm dog. A tense call produces a dog that paces, whines, or positions itself in physical contact with you. That level of specificity cannot be explained by confusion or jealousy. It requires a different framework entirely. In 2014, researchers at EOTVO's Larin University in Budapest published findings in Current Biology that fundamentally changed how behavioral scientists understand canine auditory processing. Using fMRI imaging on awake, trained dogs, Andix and colleagues identified that dogs process emotionally loaded human vocalizations in a brain region functionally analogous to the human auditory cortex's emotional processing centers. This is not a peripheral finding. It means dogs have a dedicated neural architecture for decoding emotional content from human sound, and it operates automatically, below the threshold of conscious behavioral decision-making. Positive vocal tone activates reward-associated neural regions. Stressed or negative vocal patterns activate threat detection circuitry. The dog doesn't decide to react to your stressed phone voice. Its brain has already processed the emotional content and initiated a physiological response before any visible behavior appears. What you see, the approach, the stare, the pacing, is the output of a system that already completed its analysis. The sequence is measurable and precise. Within milliseconds of detecting a vocal tone shift, your dog initiates an acoustic orientation response. Ears right position, attention locks. The amygdala then classifies the input as threat or safety. That classification triggers a hypothalamic cascade that prepares the body for behavioral response. Critically, this process does not require visual confirmation. Dogs can identify human emotional states from vocal cues alone, and stress-coded vocal patterns, the kind that appear in tense phone calls, produce measurable cortisol elevation in listening dogs within minutes. Your dog is not waiting to see your face or body language. It has already extracted sufficient emotional data from the acoustic signal alone. The behavioral reaction you observe is the end of the process, not the beginning. Here's the first major misread. Owners consistently interpret phone call reactions as separation anxiety or attention seeking. The dog approaches, paws at you, positions itself against your leg, and the interpretation is, it just wants me. What's actually occurring is targeted emotional mirroring. The dog's behavioral system is synchronizing to the detected emotional state of its owner, a documented social bonding function in cognitively complex mammals. Watch it more carefully. A dog that paces during a tense call and then settles the moment your tone relaxes is not being clingy. It is demonstrating real-time acoustic emotional tracking. The behavior is tracking your voice, not chasing your attention. The difference matters because the intervention required to address each cause is completely different. Here's a distinction most owners never encounter, and it's behaviorally critical. A dog that reacts to a genuinely tense call, approaches, monitors, settles when the call ends, is demonstrating emotional congruence. That is a normal, healthy social function. It indicates a dog whose emotional tracking system is calibrated correctly. A dog that reacts to any vocal variation, any shift in pitch, any change in speaking pace, even a cheerful or mildly animated conversation, is demonstrating emotional reactivity. Its nervous system has been sensitized to trigger threat responses at progressively lower acoustic thresholds. The difference is calibration. The first dog responds proportionally to genuine emotional signals. The second dog has had its baseline recalibrated by cumulative exposure to high-stress vocal environments. Its threat detection system is now set too sensitive, triggering on acoustic variations that carry no real threat signal. This is not a personality trait. It is an acquired physiological state, and it has measurable consequences. Your dog is not just reacting to your current emotional state, it is cross-referencing your current vocal pattern against its entire experiential database. A dog that has repeatedly experienced the clipped urgency of a work crisis call followed by your sudden departure, or the elevated tension of a difficult call followed by shortened, irritable interactions, has built conditioned acoustic associations. The vocal pattern itself becomes a predictive stimulus. By the time you're 3 sentences into the call, your dog has already generated an emotional forecast for what comes next, and it is behaviorally preparing for that predicted environment. The reaction isn't to what's happening now, it's to what the acoustic data predicts will happen after the call ends. That is a cognitively sophisticated operation, and calling it neediness fundamentally mischaracterizes it. Here is where owner behavior becomes the central factor. Dogs that develop extreme acoustic sensitivity to phone calls have often been trained into it, not intentionally, but systematically. The mechanism is straightforward. Owners who regularly transition from tense calls directly into displaced frustration, shorter commands, physical tension, clipped interactions, teach their dog that stressed vocal patterns reliably predict aversive post-call environments. Over repeated cycles, this doesn't just condition the dog's reaction to calls, it recalibrates the dog's entire baseline acoustic sensitivity upward. You have, without realizing it, trained your dog to monitor your voice with the focused vigilance of an early warning system, because that is precisely the function your behavioral pattern taught it to perform. The standard behavioral advice: ignore the dog during calls. Reward calm behavior afterward. Simple enough. It fails because it targets the wrong variable. Behavioral suppression achieved through reward withholding does not reduce the neurological stress response. It teaches the dog to inhibit the visible behavioral output while the internal physiological cascade continues unchanged. The pacing stops, the whining stops, the cortisol doesn't. And suppressed chronic stress in dogs produces documented long-term consequences: immune disruption, sleep architecture changes, progressive sensitization of startle response, that don't resolve by teaching a dog to sit quietly while its nervous system remains activated. Addressing the behavior without addressing the acoustic emotional environment that generates it is incomplete intervention. This capacity for vocal emotional processing did not emerge through domestication. It predates it. Dogs carry a mammalian social heritage in which reading emotional states from vocalizations was a survival critical function, operating through neural pathways that are faster, more automatic, and more resistant to extinction than consciously learned behaviors. You cannot train this system away. It is not a habit, it is architecture. And sustained exposure to emotionally loaded vocal environments has physiological consequences. Veterinary behavioral research documents that dogs in chronically high vocal stress households, frequent arguments, elevated voice patterns, persistent tension, show cortisol elevation, immune suppression markers, and disrupted sleep architecture indistinguishable from those found in documented noise trauma studies. Your voice is not just communication, it is an environmental condition your dog's body responds to biologically. 3 interventions, all of them target the neurological system, not the behavioral symptom. First, acoustic de-escalation awareness. Learn to recognize your own vocal pattern shifts during high-stress calls. Deliberate tonal modulation, lowering pitch, slowing rhythm, is not about the person on the other end. It's about reducing the acoustic stress load your dog's nervous system is processing in real time. The effect is measurable and immediate. Second, post-call transition rituals. Establish a consistent, low-demand behavioral bridge between call completion and dog interaction. A brief, calm physical acknowledgement that signals to the dog's threat detection system that the acoustic stress event has concluded. The nervous system needs a reliable cue that the environment has returned to baseline. Without it, the dog remains in a physiologically elevated state, monitoring for continuation. Third, graduated acoustic desensitization. Systematically expose your dog to neutral recordings of varied vocal tones in controlled reward-paired contexts. This progressively recalibrates the acoustic threat threshold upward, reducing the range of vocal variation that triggers a stress response. This is not about silencing the dog's monitoring system. It is about recalibrating what that system treats as a genuine signal. Your dog is not eavesdropping on your phone calls. It is monitoring your nervous system to the only channel it has continuous, unfiltered access to, your voice. Every call you take beside your dog is not a private conversation happening adjacent to them. It is an acoustic emotional broadcast they are receiving, decoding, and responding to with a sophistication that most owners never recognize, because the popular framework reduces the behavior to confusion or neediness. When you understand that your voice is a continuous emotional data stream, and that your dog is fluent in reading it, the relationship to your own vocal self-regulation shifts from irrelevant to structurally important. Your dog's reaction during your phone calls is not a behavior problem. It is accurate reporting. Think about the one type of phone call that consistently produces the strongest reaction in your dog, not the most frequent call, the one that reliably produces the most intense response. Now, consider what emotional pattern the call type consistently carries, and what your dog has learned to predict will follow. That's not anxiety. That's acoustic profiling built from your behavioral history together. If you want to understand how deep this emotional intelligence actually goes, the next video covers how dogs read physical and behavioral cues to track your emotional state, even when you're not speaking at all.